We live?
Yes.
That's okay. Just asking. Okay, so first off, I just want to say Chelsea and I don't want to say struggled, but it took us a little bit of time to kind of decipher what we want to talk about tonight. So this is me poking our audience, all three of you.
No, according to Instagram, there's 61.
I'm just teasing. But we truly want to express our ideas and share experiences of our life that coincide with things that you all want to hear about. So otherwise, we're just going to keep coming up with topics that we think are interesting or things that you want to hear. So, but anyways, tonight we want to talk about goals and dreams, or dreams and goals, however you want to phrase that. We couldn't decide. But what we really mean by that is dreams. We want to talk about that in the sense of long-term, both individually and collectively, because you're not an individual anymore. You're a couple. But that doesn't mean God doesn't lay individual passions or desires on your specific heart. So it's important to make sure that you and your partner understand them and complement each other and support each other, even if they're a little different. Nobody's going to be partnering with somebody. We even talked about this on prior episodes that are exactly the same. It's because we're not. We're two individual people that God created uniquely with different desires, interests, likes, and that in turn results in us having different short-term way of thinking of things and long-term means of thinking of things. So that's kind of what we're going to chit-chat about tonight.
Well, I think a lot of times in marriage, we just kind of chug along and we don't even think about these things. And then we get to a point, usually once the kids are older and more independent, or the kids are out of the house, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, now what do we do?
Or you blacked out like 3 years of your life when you had three under three and you forgot what you were doing.
Right. So I liked before we started recording how you explained this about the car with the tires and the paint.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I know my wife and I communicate in metaphors because it helps us understand the different ways that we're trying to say something and the other person's not understanding it. So it helps bring some understanding. So we get frustrated and then we try to figure out how we're not communicating well, and we use a metaphor anyways. But just prior to going live here, we kind of or I was expressing how I felt tonight's topic was, and that is I think it's important that a relationship between two unique people has a good understanding of where we're going long term, short term, what drives that person, what really motivates them, because everyone has intrinsic means of how they're motivated that is completely different sometimes. We can see that in our kids, and so are we, even as adults. And so some of the previous topics that we covered, we thought, and I expressed, were a little bit more foundationally important. So I tried to explain it to Chelsea, like, it's like a car without a wheel. Like, if you don't have conflict resolution, communication skills to be able to relate to your spouse or others, you can have some ultimate failure points. If you don't have the ability to have that harmony of emotional and spiritual and physical connectedness with your spouse and be intimate, I'm sorry, you're probably going to fail. I mean, I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer, but I think that that's a true reality, especially a prolonged amount of time, and you don't find a way to meet that harmony. So those other topics that we talked about, communication, intimacy, conflict resolution. What's the other one? What am I missing? We did one other one.
Communication was in there, but differences.
Yes.
I think that was like
you're right. Differences. Yeah. So just having that full intuitive awareness of you as individuals and coming together in that oneness.
Roles and responsibilities.
Roles and responsibilities.
That was last week.
Yeah. But all of those things that I think that we covered in our previous episodes, those are really truly foundational, that could really be a make or break situation. And I feel like this topic tonight, I don't think it's quote unquote foundational. Like, you could have completely different perspectives about how you're motivated on a day-to-day basis, where you see your individual accomplishments or the bucket list that you have doesn't have to be the same. And in fact, I can't imagine that most people's would be the same. Now they might be similar. That would be helpful. But it's not a make or break topic. But I think the thing that could, potentially be problematic is if you never talk about them, it might be really, really hard for you as we move through these chapters in our life, not pages per se, but chapters of where there's some significant dynamic family and relational changes that you're going to have some friction points because you didn't have a clear understanding of both the way that you are and maybe you're not a good understanding of where your spouse's perspective is in regards to their long-term goals and what motivates them and what their drive is for. So
that's true.
Yeah.
I think as you were saying that, I was just thinking about, this is more that piece of we're all working to have growth in our marriage and to have that exceptional marriage, not just to default and chug along, right? Like, so this is that other layer of like, we want to share our dreams with each other. We also want to encourage and foster dreams that we have together that we can work on together, because the kids are going to leave, and then what? Right?
Yeah.
Like, and if you have been doing life side by side but not actually together, you're not going to have anything to really work on in that. And honestly, I just learned today that marriage is ending after 20 years is on the rise. It's been doubling every decade for like the last 40 years. And I think that it has a lot to do with this piece that we have very kid-centric homes and very career-centric homes, but we don't have very marriage-first-centric homes. And so when we're not sharing these dreams and visions and growing together, we tend to grow apart like the rest of the world. And that's when we find ourselves in that situation of, well, we don't have anything in common. So what's the point of being married anymore?
It's like a garden you guys started when you got engaged and you got married and then you got kids and then you just kind of you never watered it. You never came along and pulled the weeds out, and then you come back to it after the kids are gone and you're like, well, this garden looks like trash. Where's all the vegetables I planted, and
it seems easier just to start a new garden
than
to
so
fix the
exactly
one, to do all the work to fix
people are people are starting over. Exactly. They're like, hey, now the kids are gone, like, let's figure out what we're doing.
right. So this is that extra layer of helping to build an exceptional marriage, of thinking about these things ahead of time. And just like Zach said, we're very different in the way that we're motivated. I am very future focused. I want to accomplish a lot of things, and I have a long list of things that I want to do. Whereas Zach is more holistic of the direction that he's going, not necessarily the boxes that he's checking like I have. And so that doesn't mean that we can't have shared dreams and goals. It just means that we approach them differently.
Right.
And,
we'll share a little bit, some points in our marriage where, we even had, I wouldn't say tough conversations, but like some conversations where Chelsea just was not understanding my perspective because we have two very different professions. Chelsea is in an entrepreneurial environment where she has business coaches, individual coaches, where, they provide very tangible techniques to progress whatever type of growth you're aiming at, whether that's in your business, as an individual, whether that's speaking or, your fitness, your nutrition. Okay, that all of those things are really good. And even me with a business background, I can really appreciate all of the people that invested in her. And, Chelsea's really worked on her mindset to produce and practice diligently making what's called a dream board, right? She's always had a cork board with things, even if it was just
things
a short,
I'm working towards, big goals I'm working towards, all kinds of things, like things that inspire me, all the things.
And she'd jot them down on a Post-it and she'd put them up there so that she could visually see
what I'm working towards.
Yeah, exactly. It's essentially as in she was building a target for herself.
Right.
And she would use that as a means of keeping her on track. Is what I'm doing right now today. The daily activities, what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, is that propelling me towards my target, my dream board? Is it helping me accomplish those things? So as much as I appreciated that, and she's really taken that into her character and it's in her fiber now. So anyways, fast forward, you know, I mean, this has been over the past several years she's done this. And she and I would have conversations and she would express like, I have no idea, like, what are your goals? And I would just look at her and be like, my goal is to have a great lunch. Like, it would be the most monotonous thing because that's just how I am. My career is vastly different than hers. I could be the knockout best soldier in the world, but I'm sorry. This is the Army Reserve. You're getting promoted in 7 years. Like, it's not going to happen any faster, no matter how.
Well, this cropped up at work too, because your boss was wanting, or I guess your boss's boss, whatever, whoever he is, was wanting him to make a dream board.
Somewhat of a dream board because he lives in the civilian world. Like, he thinks this motivates me. I'm like, no, that doesn't motivate me. I'm discouraged. Because if I do all the things in the world, and we're talking in the professional sense right now, not spiritual growth, not relational, but in my professional world, I try to filter through as much garbage crap taskers from that don't make any sense, and what's going to help my soldiers. And I have a huge passion for individual coaching and mentorship and development. But outside of that, I have zero goals that are going to quote unquote propel my career. It's just that doesn't do it for me. I already know my end state is as long as I don't kill somebody and I continue to breathe, I'm going to get promoted at the same rate everybody else is. If I do X number of years in service, I'm going to retire. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't slack because of that perspective. I still do my best, but I am only motivated out of doing my best to bring glory to God's kingdom. That is literally the only reason I have any means of motivation in my daily activities. So Chelsea has a different perspective. And after me explaining to her why I thought that way, much like the past 30 seconds to a minute that I just shared with you all, she was like, that does make sense now why maybe you.
I mean, I can't really understand it to my core because that's not who I am, but so he, you know what, this is the beautiful thing of marriage, though. He grounds me, whereas I can get very stuck in the future of all the things I'm working towards and not actually ever get anything done here. You know, it's good like that. But we want to encourage you to talk about short-term and long-term. But then also, you know, for some of those things that aren't shared, like I want to write a book. Zach would probably rather die.
I don't know about die, but
I'm just kidding.
I have no motivation to allocate my time towards.
I mean, I could write books. I want to write lots of books.
I'll be a co-author and probably never type a sentence.
Sure, there you go. But like looking at your spouse and being supportive and understanding, and you know, like with his career, that is my role, supportive and understanding, and you know, willing to do what we need to do, right? I mean, that's not necessarily my dream. My dream was never to marry an Army guy, and actually it was never your dream to be one, right? You know,
kind of fell into it.
So I think that's another thing we wanted to point out is that, you know, we do set our dreams and, you know, or we have our dreams and we set our goals, but we also hold them really loosely and we wrap them in prayer and just have an awareness of when God is leading us in a different direction, you know, because we don't know what's happening tomorrow, honestly, but we still need to plan. We still need to know how to prioritize our time. We still need to know, like, you know, if we're really working on our budget and following it, we probably need to plan meals at home that are going to save us more money, right? Like if our budget's not important to us, then, well, okay, that's not an area we need to spend a lot of time planning and prepping in, right? You know, so it really helps you to decide and make those decisions and time allocations for where you're spending your resources every single day. Right.
I have two things that I want to follow up. That I kind of thought about while you were talking is.
I'm gonna get a drink.
You do that. So number one, and this goes back to Chelsea's response and how it played in recently to where what my boss's boss wanted me to kind of put a little one sheet paper together on like, what are your goals? What are your...
You didn't like cut out stuff from magazines, like pictures that motivate you? Mm-mm. Oh man, he needs to up level.
And so one of those was I really reflected on the conversations that Chelsea and I had, where I told you we were kind of, I don't want to say butting heads, but just not seeing eye to eye until we came to a point of clarity after pulling on the thread a little bit more and getting some clarity together. Is I can really summarize my daily short-term motivations, what drives me, or what kind of frames my actions.
Like why you do what you do.
Right. So number one, and I even write this on my military papers when I get counseled or like, what are your goals for this year? I write this. I'm very bottom line up front. I don't get into the weeds. Number one, I want to be a better Christ follower than I was yesterday. Point number two, I want to be a better husband than I was yesterday. Number three, I want to be a better father to my children than I was yesterday. I literally summed it up in those three things. And that is how I conduct myself on a routine basis. Do I fail? Yeah. And that's why I ask myself those questions. That's what frames my target. As I expressed, Chelsea has her board, which are great because within her area of control, she has a lot of latitude to be able to pursue those things at whatever rate she can. My dynamics in my professional world are a little bit different, and that's how I frame myself. So, and a little candidness here is I've even had talks with Chelsea even recently that I just feel like God has me in a place of preparation recently. Not like I'm not like I'm progressing, not progressing as an individual, but I feel like in my career, I feel like I'm in somewhat of a holding pattern. Like God's preparing me for something. I don't know if it's complete career change. I don't know if it's just a slight deviation off of my previously perceived professional path. DC. I don't know. Yeah, he probably, you know what? That would be God really.
Of all the places.
Putting me where he needs me to be.
Watch out, DC.
But so that was my first point that I wanted to bring up with what you are. But I could hear you already when you were discussing earlier, alluding to the fact that we, regardless of whatever we put on our dream board, or
that's not
or how we frame what we do, right? We're always quiet in our spirit and we're listening for ways that God wants us to go. I think that's what you were getting at.
Yeah.
Was we have to be flexible.
Yeah, for sure. Flexible. Like it's like we make our dreams, but we hold them open-handed to God.
Right.
Right. Because it's really easy to say, well, this is my goal, so I have to do this. But what about when you're driving along and this happens to us all the time? Someone has a blown tire on the side of the road and it's like, do we keep driving? Have we packed our schedule so full that we're not like listening to those prompts from the Holy Spirit? And it was interesting. So one story we did want to share was back in 2014, I think, or was it 2013? 2014, had to have been 2014 because Emma was born in 2013 at the end. Dear. So 2014, we both felt like God was stirring something, kind of the same feeling that we're getting now a little bit.
Yeah.
Like we knew we were ready for a change. And we just felt like God was preparing us for something. And he got a call and they said, hey, you want to move to Texas? And
we had no idea what it was.
No.
But we were like, you know what? We felt like we were, I'm going to use this analogy and people can hate it. I'd love to see comments. No, this yesterday I patched Gabe's tire on his bike.
Yeah.
And before you put the patch and the rubber cement on there, you literally take a designed little piece of aluminum and you scrape the rubber that you're going to put the patch on and prepare it for the glue to be, or the rubber cement and the patch to be placed so that it forms a good bond. Like right now, I just feel like you're being
scraped.
We are being scraped and sanded and scraped up, just wait in that waiting period where, in that Texas thing Chelsea was talking about is we'd had, like I said,
Texas was not on our radar.
No, we didn't have any, none of this was planned. I literally got a call from our colonel who was like, hey, just curious. I was at my brother's wedding at the time.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want to take this mobilized position and come to Texas? Yeah. And I was on a balcony and I opened up the sliding door. I was like, hey, Chels, you want to move to Texas? And
I looked up and I said, yeah. Sure. And of course, the family is like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Pump the brake. What do you, what?
So the whole family's at the wedding. Like, what is this? What is going on? And we're like, well, Chelsea and I knew something was coming. And so, here it is. So how do you make a bigger banner than that? It's like the airplane going by with the sign, right? Come move to Texas.
Right.
Well, that's out of left field, God. Sounds good.
We sold our house in Wisconsin in winter.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks before Christmas. I think we signed on December 15th. Something like that. And it was totally a chaotic time. He was working in Chicago, actually, where you work now, which is ironic. It was just, we saw God moving at every point. Like, selling your house in winter in Wisconsin is not an easy thing to do. And just everything worked out. I mean, we were even driving down after we had sold our house and Zach hadn't gotten his orders. I hadn't even gotten official published orders. He chose not to tell me that until he got the orders. It wasn't like I was, it wasn't like I was withholding this information. It was more or less protecting. I had confidence in the person that had reached out to me and offered the position. So I don't recommend that if you're a military member, person listening to the podcast, don't ever move or sell your house based on a VOCO. We moved on our dime. That was the other thing. So we had put like half our house in storage and then it was only a year long, which he had talked to other guys there and they're like, oh yeah, we've been here for years and years and years, you know? So we're like, great, you know, we'll be able to stay and recoup our costs and all that. And then they were like, yeah, we're only keeping it to a year. Yeah. Right. So. And so then we're like, oh, dang, you know, we're like, okay, God moved us here for a reason. Yeah. So we're not going to panic, you know. You know, we really, met some great people. Oh, we totally did. There. That was probably one of my favorite, not necessarily locations, but one of my favorite spiritual places, I guess you could say, because we really grew. Yeah. We grew our marriage. We grew, I think, personally. We grew relationally, spiritually, all the different things. And I think in summary here is just we stepped out into that unknown, and we had a spirit that was willing to listen. And when you got that call, we didn't hesitate. We jumped said, 2 feet in, both of us. So and then it led to more amazing things because while we were there, he got picked up for AGR, which was an amazing thing. And then that started the whole us moving every few years, but now the Army's paying for it. So that's a good thing. Yeah. They moved us. I didn't pay for anything other than that initial move to Texas. So, but yeah. So that was a big deal, so planning, yes, but holding things loosely and really listening to how God is working in your lives, whether he's scraping you and preparing you for something or he's telling you to stay where you are and dig in, maybe I think always God's asking us to get out of our comfort zone in some way, whether it's small things or big things. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up? And another thing, I just wanted to share one other small story. We already told you we did a couple other marriage groups and things of that nature, but we were asked to kind of talk about some of our long-term goals in these in some of the exercises we did. It helped, and Chelsea used this earlier, like help bring you down a little bit, not grounding me. Grounded you. That's grounding a better word. I didn't want to use the words bringing you down. Yeah. Grounding but I grounded you a bit when we talked about like, well, how often do you want to go on a family vacation? How often do you want to go do a group thing? What are some your bucket list things for, every 5 years, 10 years? So anyways, I laid all the things that Chelsea was super excited to put on her little sheet of paper. Yeah. And I calculated the cost for all these things, and we need to save $7,500 a month outside of all of our normal expenses to afford them. So or we could just make $7,000 a month more. See, that's how my brain works. And that's great. I just want to see the tangible results before I commit. See, there's the rational person. So that's my small story that I wanted to share too, where, just to summarize, just be open and about where you see yourself as a couple and a family,
and have some, deep discussions about that, so that you understand, both of you have a good reality of how you're going to get there. Because don't stifle each other's dreams, but also understand that you always have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the family. I have wanted to buy land. My only dream on my long-term dream is I want to own land that has at least a trout stream class 2 going through it, and a little bit of elevation, some tillable land. And I want, that's what I mean. Some tillable land and some actual wooded area, so that I can hunt, fish, be sustainable, and hide from the government's taxes.
And I just want a nice running trail around the whole perimeter.
Sure. And I'd love to put that in. I'll build you some bridges over there. Yeah.
All the things,
so, but we have those small little things, but we have to understand it's in God's timing too. So I know that God's put that on my heart for a reason, and in his time, hopefully that comes to fruition. If it doesn't, you know what, I'll be much happier having deviated from my personal dream to fulfill something God has better for me.
Yeah, God's plans are always better than ours, honestly. My dream was to live in the same house that we bought together for
so God lives. Laughed at her, and then
it's funny because I would have been so bored. God probably just patted me on the head and was like, honey, you can't stay here forever. You'll kill somebody. He was like, I got an adventure plan for you.
Killed me.
Probably we might killed each other, but yeah, he had way better plans for us. So that brings us to our big takeaway, is just to talk about these things.
So our 2 takeaways. You want to talk about those or what?
No, I meant the big idea. I'm sorry, like the big idea.
Yeah.
Is just to talk about these things and to go a little further. Everyone always plans like, what are your short-term goals, and how about a year from now? But how about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Like, figure out how old your kids are going to be at that time, and how old are you going to be, and all those things. Because
how old your parents and your close relatives are going to be also.
Because those things are going to really impact what your dreams are and like what's realistic. So
and that might
that grounding, but also elevate you too, because you might see like what's actually possible. Like if in the short term you're working on being debt free, so then in the long term you can plan and like have these bigger dreams because you have more of that financial freedom and that kind of stuff, So anyway, so that's really the big takeaway, is to talk about them. So then our 2 action steps are just that.
Yeah.
The first one is talk about short term.
Yeah. And not just your goals either, not your short term. I know Chelsea and I kind of shared our short term goals, but also what motivates you. Certain people are motivated to either accomplish things, work, or they get a sense of pride and motivation to continue or start a new project based on accomplishing something else. And some people look at things like a to-do list, and they just feel like it's never ending. They're always accomplishing something, but the to-do list never ends. So truly just have that discussion about what motivates you and what your short-term goals are.
You, and to make sure that it's something internal a lot of times, because if you're looking to other people or each other as motivation, that's not it's just not a healthy way to do it.
Right.
Because it needs to be something that honestly is within your control. Because on the days when you don't feel motivated, if it's within your control, you can work around it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm still looking for how to motivate Zach to want to work out. Right.
You're asking me?
Yeah. A reason. Because he's
I'm not going to work out no matter how much she just wants me to. I'm going to work out for me. If I'm like, that brings me to a whole other story. Just at work, we did this USARC Double Eagle Fitness Challenge. We were supposed to lift a certain amount of pounds and do HIIT training and cardio. And I'm like, no, like my brain doesn't think that way. If I want to become really good at resistance training, which actually I did gravitate towards throughout the challenge, and I started lifting a lot more. Now I would say that consistently I am lifting, and I'll throw in like one cardio a day where I go running, because I still enjoy running, and it's healthy for you to do that on a routine basis, no matter what your fitness goals are. But so yeah, I gravitated towards resistance training, and but I'm not motivated by what other people tell me to do.
Like I'm motivated to work out because I like how it makes me feel after, like not necessarily like working towards something. It's more about the actual process of it now. I've fallen in love with that process, but not so much you.
Yeah. I feel accomplished on a physical fitness level by achieving physical fitness goals. Like I used to run really fast and always be a runner. I'm kind of done with that.
Yeah.
I know I'm never going to run a sub 5-minute mile again. Did I check that box? And that's just, that's my brain, right? I knew I would never run a sub 4-minute mile, but you know what? I said, you know what? I'm going to run a sub 5-minute mile, and I did it twice. And I said, okay, I'm done with that. I have no more motivation to do that.
Well, it's like after we finished our marathon, and it's like, well, now do you want to do ultra marathons? And we're like, heck no.
I wanted to do a marathon. I set out to do it. I did it. Check the box. I'm a box checker.
We're good for that.
All right.
Maybe half marathons, but not.
Let's get back on track.
Okay. So anyway, so our first action step was to talk about the short term, and like Zach said, make sure you're like digging into those, right? And then the second one is to talk about the long term, and really to have a bigger vision, more long term, more dreams. Maybe each of you make a bucket list. That's fun, right? And then put them together and see, like, do you have any commonalities? Move those to the top of the list. Just something fun to look forward to, right? Something to bring in that thrill and that excitement of like, oh, I can't wait till the kids are gone because we can go do this, right?
Yeah. And a lot of times people put stuff on their bucket list that is like a no joke. They as an individual, I mean, need to do this. And some of the things they put on their bucket list, like, oh, that would be really cool. But I mean, it's not life or death. So you find out those non-negotiables and some of the ones that maybe you could negotiate to coincide with maybe what your partner had on their bucket list, and then you could do it together.
Swimming with great whites, terrifying, but it has to happen.
See, so
things like that. Skydiving,
sure.
Places to visit, all kinds. So
see, those are activities that if I had a location on the globe that I really wanted to visit, we could do both of those, all 3 bucket list items in one time.
Ooh, that sounds great.
So,
the trifecta.
But that's what I mean. So you can blend your long-term either bucket list stuff or
I do love that movie. Okay, so then the verse we wanted to use is from Ruth, and actually I painted this and it's in our room because I feel like it really embodies, well, life as a military family, but especially as husband and wife.
So contextually, Ruth, in the book of Ruth, it's talking about a lady named Naomi. She had 2 daughter-in-laws, and her sons both died. So she was a widow, and now both her daughter-in-laws are both now widows who were married to her sons, and she has no more sons. So she was encouraging her daughter-in-laws, one of which is Ruth.
Encouraging? I'm pretty sure she was like, go
find a new husband. I can't take care of you.
Right. So this is actually not Ruth and Boaz talking together. It's Ruth and Naomi. So Ruth's talking to Naomi. So go ahead.
But either way, it's fitting for.
So it's Ruth 1:16.
Yep. So actually, I'm going to read 15, even though the verse is 16, just to help frame it. So, and this is where Naomi was talking to Ruth, and she said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." So she was encouraging her to follow suit. And Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." So we're not encouraging anyone to change their religion. As Ruth did here.
You guys are the same.
Right.
Or else you probably have other problems.
We talked about that already. But anyways, we joke a tad there. But anyways, it's talking about her commitment to, Ruth didn't know Naomi's plans. She didn't know the fate of Naomi, a widow in a seemingly, Middle Eastern environment where you need to gather your own food. You need somebody, especially during this time frame. Men were such a pivotal part of the household success. Ruth's taking a big gamble.
Yeah, this was her jumping in of really.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I trust Naomi, the God that you have introduced and has been a part of my life now. And I'm just trusting. I'm stepping out in this faith that I'm never going to leave you. I'm going to be with you. And both you and I as widows are going to, follow the Lord and not separate. So that was kind of what we were getting at for tonight's verse.
Yeah. But I think it also means too that they're sharing in the dreams and the vision, right? Like maybe it was much more short term,
right.
but
I'm making it up, but it's kind of like your struggle will be my struggle. Your success will be my success.
Exactly.
And that same thing we can apply to us.
Oh gosh, that is so true. Your success will be my success. I feel like with you having an official career, right? I don't know why I said official.
Well, why don't you put some air quotes? It's not
okay.
real.
So so you would have the official career.
I have a more traditional career.
Traditional, and mine is definitely not traditional and is much more multifaceted.
Right.
But like being able to celebrate your accomplishments as if they're my own, because they are. I mean, you couldn't have done them without me taking care of the kids here, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then him being there to celebrate my accomplishments that I wouldn't have been able to do if he hadn't. I mean, I probably could have done it with still working, but not the same. Like, but you allowing me to stay home and be with the kids and have this flexible schedule.
And you're allowed to take more risk in an entrepreneurial sense,
because I don't
because you have the security of what I contribute to our family. Also.
Right. I don't have to financially keep our family secure. Like that's still there. So yeah, I think like just being able to celebrate with each other and not compete. It's not a competition. It's the mutual understanding and support. So there you go.
You want to put a quick summary in there?
No, I think we're good. We're summarized. So we don't know what we're talking about next week. So if you have ideas, please let us know. Otherwise, we're just letting God
give you a very
lead
boring Ben Stein version of a financial brief next week.
Yeah, we're going to talk budgets unless you give us better ideas.
In honesty, that would be a good episode.
That actually would. Really. Honest, it is Zach's passion, and he mentors young soldiers on it all the time.
I do.
And it's something we wish we had known when we got married.
10 years ago. I wish I knew what I knew now.
We didn't get married 10 years ago. I wish we knew it before we got married, because we went out and bought cars and TVs and
took out a loan.
We're not talking about like fancy cars, like we bought a Ford Focus.
But okay, don't get too much.
Okay, anyway. Stay tuned. Coming soon.